Can I just get a show of hands? So who here has tried to start a project, something, do something, create something, start a business, an organization, you know, make a feature-length film, wanted to make a record, write a book, anything, wanted to start something, and very quickly became overwhelmed by how the heck am I going to get there? Except Donovan, because we know we know when he sets his mind to something, he knows he's going to do it. Yeah, so again, yeah, don't be shy. You know, you get overwhelmed. That initially hugely inspiring idea, suddenly you're super overwhelmed by all the things you're going to need to get there. And suddenly that inspiration that was so on fire a minute ago, before you know it, you're in the middle of your 9th episode of Game of Thrones. I guess I should start clicking over here. Beer in hand, couch is feeling comfortable, you have no idea how you got there, and that dream is no longer a priority. So what do I mean by using your advantage, using limited resources to your advantage? Well, I'm talking about finding and seizing the opportunity, and actually, as Donovan mentioned earlier, the opportunity that is present in all limiting circumstances. And limiting circumstances really do present us with the opportunity of a lifetime every single time we encounter them. And if we just had unlimited resources all the time, we'd probably just be on that couch watching Game of Thrones. So we want to find those opportunities, and we can find those opportunities, but we have to look. And one of the reasons we don't look is because we got a lot of limiting beliefs in the first place. And I had to take a good hard look at what my limiting beliefs were. About a couple of years ago, I had fantasized. I really wanted to finally put my own record out into the world. I was 32 years old-ish. And I was like, man, I'm 32 already, and I still have a music degree under my belt, and I still haven't put out a single, not even a single, let alone a record. I haven't even put out a single. I haven't done anything. And I was like, what are my limiting beliefs? Well, my limiting beliefs are that I don't have enough resources, and that was a huge one. As soon as I calculated what I needed, I just thought I needed a lot more than maybe I did. So I don't have enough resources, manpower, money, time, energy, any of that stuff. I'm not good enough to do this. So I need to get better at guitar first. I need to get better at composing, and I need to get better before I can allow myself to make this record. There's only one way to do this, big one. Getting stuck on how you need to accomplish your dream is one of the biggest things that's going to stop you in your tracks, and I did it all the time. I was stuck on the resources I needed. I needed those resources, and I was very precise on what I thought I needed to get it done, and I got stuck in my tracks. I don't have the knowledge. If we decided to go to university and we're like, okay, I want to go to university. That's my goal, to get a bachelor degree. But I don't have the knowledge to get a bachelor degree, so you know what, I'm not going to do it. Well, what if the problem is the opportunity to obtain the knowledge that you're after? And you know, we wouldn't have anyone finishing university degrees if that was the case. And the reality is the goal that you're after might actually be the perfect opportunity for you to obtain the knowledge and the skills that you think you don't have to obtain that goal in the first place. And I should have everything in place before I start. This kind of ties back into, this is what I call, planning as procrastination. It's like saying I want to do a 10,000 piece puzzle, and I need to have all the pieces perfectly laid out and in the right place. I've got the goal, which is, I see it on the box, there's the picture, I'm going to get all the corners in place, but that's the first step most people take, but now I'm going to get every piece and perfectly lay it out before I connect any of them, and that's just not how life works. And there's a lot of fertility to be found in what we think is barren ground if we just see the problem as an opportunity. So I want to ask, what's the first thing we do when we set up a goal? We visualize what we got to do. We say, okay, I want to ski down that mountain, as Donovan said earlier. And in this case, you might say, I want to climb that peak. I'm going to go to that top right-hand one over there. And if you're in the front where this photographer is and you see this wall of trees, all you can do is first visualize where you want to go, and you can then try to break down as many of the steps as you can that you know that you will have to take. So first off is I know I have to enter the forest. I see that there's a bit of a downslope, so I'm going to go maybe down into the valley a little bit, and then I know that there's an upslope, and I might have a crazy rock climbing mission at the end of it. But outside of that, you don't know what's going to happen. So the third thing you have to realize is no matter what the steps you have figured out, they could change. Because when you enter that forest, you're going to get snagged on trees. You're going to maybe just find a river that you're going to have to swim across. And then you're going to run into a grizzly bear that you have to fight to the death with your bare hands. And then after that grizzly bear, you're going to encounter a cougar, at which point you should probably run. And you might then find another river that you have to swim across, and you'll end up on the other side somehow, and you'll start walking up that hill. But you cannot predict what's going to happen along the way. You cannot. All you can do is know where you're aiming, take whatever steps you know you can take in this moment. And for now, that's you've got to start somewhere. And that's what seizing the opportunity is all about, and that's what using constraints to your advantage is all about. Constraints are a diving board with which you can spring into something. And in this particular instance, like, well, my constraints are I've got to walk into the forest. So 2 years ago, when I set out to make this record, I had it in my head, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, that I needed to raise $34,000. And that's because, well, I'll tell you why in a second. I ended up, after a week, raising $5,100, much to the generosity of my friends and family who answered the call. And they sort of helped me dive off into this goal. But what do you do when you get stuck on the how you're going to do something? I was stuck. I thought I needed $34,000, and that's because I like to compose pretty traditionally. And I was making arrangements for they're all songs. They're catchy, melodic songs that I loved. They're dancey, they're whatever. And I was writing them very traditionally with pencil and eraser and ruler. And there were 12 to 17 piece bands, guitars and bass and keyboards and drums and horns and strings and backup singers and percussion, and the musical saw is one of my favorites. It is in one of the songs. I'm pretty stoked. It's not recorded yet, but we're getting there. And I became hung up on the fact that I needed this to be recorded live off the floor, which is musical jargon for having the whole band in a big room and playing live off the floor. And that's because when I listen to records like the Beatles and old Motown records, all this stuff was live off the floor, and I loved the energy in it. And I figured, if everyone's in the same room playing this together, then that is going to be infused in the music, and then that will translate to the listener. And I thought, when I listen to these records, there's so much energy in them. And so I needed this to be done this way. And I felt like the music is a little more sophisticated at times, so I was like, I need the best session musicians, and I want everyone to be paid well, because the music industry sucks right now, and everyone deserves to be paid because they all work really hard. And I was stuck. I jumped ahead there. I was stuck on thinking that that's what I needed. And so I hung up, and that money stayed in my account for months. The $5,000 stayed in my account because I was like, well, I'm going to have to get all these arrangements done because only 6 of the 12 were done. I was like, I should have them perfectly laid out so that everything's ready to go. And all I was doing was procrastinating. I was afraid to just get going because I was like, well, I don't have the money in my head to record live off the floor the way I thought I needed to do. And of course, life happened. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, the money was gone. Expenses happened. The campaign was launched in January. By the end of August, the money was gone. And you can't imagine the shame and the anxiety I felt for having let down all my friends and family who had supported me, and feeling like, my God, all I've got to show for it is the organ for one song and the keyboards in another song. That's all I'd recorded. And how am I going to record an entire record now with no money? And I could have got stuck even further if I didn't start asking some really important questions. And so I started to ask myself, could these constraints be used to my advantage? Could I use them for good within this project? Could I use them to create something interesting? Because the reality is I'm not taking no for an answer. I've got to do this, and I'm not going to let my family down. And I maintain the determination to find a way to do it. And I sort of discovered in doing that what I call the 3C rule. So constraints catalyze creativity. And a lot of great artists, architects, business people in the history of time will tell you, I don't like working with, I don't want to have unlimited resources. I like to work with constraints, self-imposed restrictions. And they offer us a box to work within. So does anyone know how many combinations 6 of these Lego blocks can form? And other than maybe if you saw my slide earlier, Grace. Take a guess. Anyone want to take a guess? 900 million. And that's just the 6 2x4 blocks, let alone all the other shapes Lego make. You can get really creative with 6 blocks. So when you have constraints, when you say to yourself, okay, let's say what I can make with just 6 blocks, you actually can make a lot. And the brain loves this. Our imaginations love this. If you say, okay, you can write a song or a movie or start a business doing anything you want, sometimes we get stuck. So I decided to make my record using only the voice memos application of the phone. And I said to myself, this is because I'd done some demos before, and I also realized that every idea I'd ever recorded so that I'd remember it, I'd put in voice memos, and I always loved the sound. I loved the way it colored the sound. There's built-in condensers and just software that it's a very small microphone, and it's like putting a filter on the lens of a camera or on the lens if you're a cinematographer. And I asked myself, I was like, okay, before I got to this point, when you start asking yourself, okay, what can I do? I've got no money, I've got nothing. The lazy brain, the Game of Thrones brain, when you say, okay, brain, we've got no money, how are we going to make this record? What resources do we have to make this record? And the brain's like, nothing, man, you're screwed. And you're like, you can't take no for an answer, first and foremost, from yourself. Everyone says, don't take no from an answer. That starts with yourself. So then you say to your brain again, you're like, okay, brain, seriously. Just what, if we had to use something, what could we use? And the brain's like, bro, Game of Thrones is on like 10 minutes. I told you, nothing. Just leave me alone. It's very persistent in the brain. So you've got to keep asking those questions. Okay, if we had to finish this project using only the resources we had, what could I do? And thankfully, my brain said, well, I mean, the voice memos sound pretty cool. And I was like, the voice memos do sound pretty cool. I'm going to do that. And as I said, I'd done some demos, and I said, okay, I no longer cared about making an incredible record. I knew that I could write my arrangements, and that was satisfying to myself. I knew that I could put those all together, and I wanted to see if I could record all of those instruments using just that built-in microphone. And of course, those constraints meant I had a lot of challenges, like recording the drums, one of the loudest instruments in the orchestra. And I could do things like record the drums, and then I could record him playing, you know, if the beat's going, I could record that in the room, but then if I wanted to bring the kick out in the mix, all I'd have to do is say, okay, drummer, play to this metronome and just play the kick part of that, and he'd go, I could import those parts into GarageBand later. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a music application on Macs. And I could then control various independent elements, but I had to get creative with my solutions, and this all happened because I was choosing to operate within a very restricted position. And so instead of trying to make the most out of, you know, going to work and make dollars and try to pay for it, I just said, okay, I'm going to actually use reverse psychology on myself, and I'm going to limit my resources even more and try to operate within a very tiny operating system for myself. So that's just me. After, you can see GarageBand on the right-hand side there. I've imported all the tunes. I'm following the score that I've already written out to make sure everything's lined up. And after all my hard work, my first single finally went on iTunes after months of hard work. So that was last year. So how do we apply constraints to business? And even to life in general. Now, a lot of these principles I'm about to talk, I mean, we all know them, but it's good to really hammer them home. And one of the main things before I go into that is just starting small. It's like a lot of the big companies, even like Google and Facebook, a lot of them just started small. Zuckerberg, he started in his dorm room. Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons, two incredible producers who started Def Jam Records, and they launched people like Beastie Boys and basically started a hip-hop. They made the rap revolution in the 80s, started with a little 4-track recorder in their dorm room at college and like brown paper bags. So don't think you need big resources, just start small on purpose, because that's where your creativity is really going to thrive. Set timers for yourself. Make really, I'm going to do this in 30 minutes. Single tasks. Commit to just a small task instead of your huge goal. All the small tasks add up to the bigger things. So focus on as many small tasks as you can, because they're just going to lead to the next thing, and slowly you see that puzzle building. Single task your butt off until it hurts. So multitasking may feel productive, but it's not. Limit your team. Jeff Bezos, I think that's his name, CEO of Amazon. He said, if your team can't be fed by 2 pizzas, it's too big. As soon as you bring in more people, your productivity is going to get clamped on. And creativity can sort of start to go down tubes when the team gets too big, and especially when you're operating under already limited resources. Don't stress yourself out. Set deadlines. Impossible deadlines. But deadlines are really important because often only 1 in 10 ideas are good. So the more deadlines you have, the more ideas you have to get through. Focus your content. Don't write a blog about a million different things. Be niche. Brainstorm better. So come up with one idea and flesh it out. Instead of trying to come up with as many ideas as you can, sometimes it's good to even just come up with one idea and then debate it, criticize it, flesh it out, and what will happen is the what if factor. Oh, what if it was this? What if it was that? What if it was this? And suddenly one idea does spawn many great ideas. So I decided to take a step further, and I was like, okay, well, I've got this single. Can I make a music video with no money or limited money? And so I called my friend Jocelyn Chaput, who's a great film director, and I said, okay, Jocelyn, I want to make a music video. I have no money, and I know that you're really busy making films, so I don't want to like take up a lot of your time. And since this song was already recorded on the iPhone completely, can we make a video shooting only on iPhones for a budget of $10, and the other rule is it has to be shot in under 4 hours. And she's like, let me think about it. And she calls me the next day and she's like, okay, I've got it. There's a lot of motion in this song. I've envisioned carousels. There's a carousel in Burnaby. It costs $7 for each of us to go on it, so we're going to be $4 over budget, because that's $14. And I was like, it doesn't matter. Most films go over budget anyways. We went there and we got on this carousel, and we decided we were going to improvise a lot of the shooting, and we just went, and including bus tickets, it ended up being about $11 over budget. Well, my math's off there, but it was like $20, so we were $10 over budget. But this is what we had, just a little snippet. It's not fully edited. We're almost there, but this is most of it now, and you'll hear the song as well.
Facing my loneliness quicker than I'd expected. No furniture, just a bunch of boxes. I'm feeling moody-rotten, but there's something special about this. Yes, there's something special about this. Just tell me what it is. Why don't just tell me what it is? My phone not ringing, I'm not wanted, so I guess I'll turn it up until I start to feel I'm getting desperate. No furniture, just a bunch of boxes. I'm feeling moody-rotten, but there's something special about this. It's a something special about this. Oh yes, there's something special about this. Just can't say what it is. Oh, there's something special about this.
one of the high female, thank you. Thanks very much. So one of the high female voices at the end is my mom, and she was in her cupboard in France on her iPhone singing to the Voice Memos app. So it just goes to show it's great. It's super guerrilla, and that's why I loved it. So I'll just end with this. Joseph Sugarman quote, "Each problem has hidden in an opportunity so powerful that it literally dwarfs the problem. The greatest success stories were created by people who recognized the problem and turned it into an opportunity." And I mean, I'm so blessed to have, I think all of us here, Donovan's story earlier really embodies that. And I really challenge all of you to go out into your lives and try to live it that way. So thank you.